Good morning, everyone, and welcome to our Zoom flood recovery session. It's great to have you with us here today. My name is Sharon Mortensen. I serve as President and CEO at Midland Area Community Foundation, and most importantly, I'm part of the long-term recovery group here in Midland County as we work to recover from the dam failures and the resulting flooding of 2020. So it's great to have you here today, and today is going to be a bit of a retrospective session as we look back over our journey from May of 2020 to today. And looking at as we approach this session today, we're planning for this to be our final recap. So while we've been doing these Zoom sessions for the past year plus, to make sure we keep the community informed about the work that is going on and that has gone on here in our community, and to answer questions and let people know how the donations that they've given to help with this have continued to be invested in helping our community with recovery. So we're pleased to have you here today on what we plan to be our final session. However, if there's an interest or a topic that comes up that we decide it would be best to, again, offer this on behalf of the long-term recovery group to our community, we certainly will do this. So meanwhile, we're going to take you on a journey today. And we have with us 4 speakers that will cover different aspects of the recovery. And as we look at this journey that we've been on since May of 2020, it's been both an incredibly challenging journey, but an inspirational journey. As we look at how people have come together in our region, in our community, how they have worked together, how they have persevered through incredible challenges, it's been inspirational to watch community at its finest. And really, as we think about our community's vision of together, forward, bold, an exceptional place where everyone thrives, what we've seen happen through this recovery process has reflected that again and again. So it's exciting to have with us our 4 speakers, Bridget Granson, who is our county administrator from Midland County. And she's going to take us through the beginning stages of what happened and also talk about some of the current as we look at moving through FEMA and the work that's been needed there. We have Dolores Porty, who is the village president for the village of Sanford, that's going to talk about their journey. Holly Miller, who's the CEO and president of the United Way of Midland County. And then also me, we're going to talk about the work of the long-term recovery group and the investments that have been made and are continuing to be made in our community as we work on recovery. So I'm going to turn it over first to Bridget to get us started. So thanks for being here, Bridget.
Thank you for having me, Sharon. So it seems hard to believe that the flood was just last May. It's impacting a lot of people in this community still as we go through the presentation today. But one of the things that I think that we can say was a positive in our 2020 response was the way we communicated in our communication process. So we had the 2017 flood, which we learned a lot about some successes we had for communication and also things that were a challenge and things we needed to do differently. One of those things that we learned from 2017 was actually that the public really would benefit from press conferences. So, we started out in 2020 being already challenged because not only did we have a historic flooding and dams fail, but we had COVID. So we were in the middle of a situation where we were challenged by proximity, how close we were to people, how people got information and where they were physically located. So we did start having early on press conferences. We put press releases out into the media and on social media and into the news. And we realized early on, thanks to our local township fire folks, especially in the Sanford area, that people did not have utilities. They didn't have internet. They didn't have power in many cases, and because they were displaced from their homes, they may not have even had cell service where they were. So if you look at this schematic, we planned, we learned from what we did, and we adjusted. We communicated, and then we evaluated what we did. The evaluation process came when local fire said, hey, we are making flyers from your press releases and putting information out and handing that out door to door. And we're putting that information, we're making that available at the township firehouse, because people weren't getting information that we were putting out in all instances. So it was a great opportunity for us to learn. Next slide, Em. All right, so the first 72 hours, again, we had some major challenges because of COVID. Monday evening, we actually had our first ever Zoom Emergency Operations Center debriefing. And we all came together and talked about what our next plans were. We knew that there was potential for breaching of dams further north and up in Glavine County, Smallwood and Secord, particularly Smallwood. And because of that, we weren't sure what the impact would be in Edenville, but we knew that there was a potential for Edenville Dam to fail. So at that point in time, about midnight, it was decided that local township fire and other volunteers would start the evacuation process, including an alert that 911 sent out, letting people know that there was the potential for imminent failure at Edenville. I think in the townships, we evacuated almost 1,000 people. Earlier on Tuesday morning, the city began the evacuation process and evacuated about 10,000 people in the city limits, primarily due to the potential that Edenville Dam was going to fail. We had exercised a potential dam failure the previous fall, so we had some inundation maps that helped us determine where the water might go if the dams failed. It was about 5:45. I want to say it was about 5:30 when we found out in the Emergency Operations Center that Edenville Dam had breached. And at that point, 911 sent out an immediate evacuation order because the dam had failed. Tuesday afternoon is when we had sent out the information, or I guess it was about 6:45 when we sent out a notice that there was imminent failure potential at Sanford. And it was a short time, very short time, less than 30 minutes after that, that the Sanford Dam on the west side of the powerhouse collapsed. And I think everybody kind of knows what happened right after that. Next slide, Em. Thank you. So if you look at call stats, we had much higher than normal calls, primarily because of COVID and stay-at-home with the dam failures and the flooding. But our call volume at 911 had actually been a little bit less because people were following the stay-at-home order that the governor had implemented. So if you look at the kind of call volume we had on the 17th and the 18th leading up to the dam failure, that first 24 hours, we had over 1,300 calls, and over 700 of them involved public safety responses. In our first hour, in basically 20 minutes after the notice went out, we had 132 calls, and in the third hour of the actual failure, 456 calls. That is an incredible amount of volume for the number of people we have working in central dispatch. Radio transmission was really critical way for us to communicate, considering that a lot of utilities were out up in the Sanford area. Normal day leading up to the flood, 1,500 transmissions on May 17th. And as you can see on the 19th, we had almost 6,000 and almost 9,000 on the total system. It just went up from there, considering all of the response that we had and all of the people that were displaced from their homes. On top of the fact that within a very short time frame, we had a lot of people coming into the community to help. So you can see that 6,400 number is pretty incredible. people helping people. I think that it's a good list. Is it an inclusive, totally inclusive list? No, but you can see from the folks and the organizations that are listed on this slide how many partnerships were activated and in use when we were gearing up for potential dam failure and after the dam had failed. It was kind of a joke. Oh, if you want to go back to that, thanks, Emily. It was kind of a joke in the EOC that I had mentioned that it seems like we are having the Bible unfold in front of us, first a global pandemic and then historic flooding. And my 911 director would say, what's next, killer bees? And I reminded her it was locusts. And she reminded me that was already a banner crop of locusts in the southern part of our country. So we definitely were living up to a lot of challenges. And I think that that's the critical thing to acknowledge here is how resilient this community was, how much support we had, and how we really stood up to help each other. Continued conversations with FEMA. So FEMA was in and out rather quickly for folks that were individuals and had residential problems. The continued conversations are really with the nonprofits and local governments that were working with FEMA, the FEMA teams, to try and have damage that was done to public infrastructure and private nonprofit infrastructure. For example, the Center for the Arts, and trying to figure out what documentation was needed, what kind of purchasing policies had to be managed to actually get FEMA to approve reimbursement for certain things. Some of those approval processes were easier than others. Some were denied. We are still trying to work through some denials. I don't expect that that our engagement with FEMA will end anytime in the near future. We're not having weekly calls with FEMA anymore. A lot of that has been handed over to the state of Michigan, but the projects still have to go through FEMA process to be closed out once we're able to actually do that. And some of those projects will take multiple years. And I'm handing it over to Dolores.
Thanks, Bridget. Can you hear me okay? Okay, thank you. I'm Dolores Porty, and I retired in 2016 from a global leadership position to relax in my hometown. I'm on the village council to reinvest in the community, but little did I know that we'd be rebuilding the village due to 2 dam failures and a flood. And I have to pick up on what Bridget said, because at one point during the cleanup, we did get a call from downtown that said there were bees all over the place because somebody hit a bee's nest, and we did ask for first aid from the fire department. So the bees actually did arrive. Given the tremendous response from businesses in the community, we're coming back bigger, better, and stronger. This community is closer knit, closer together, and I'm amazed at the amount of generosity and camaraderie that we've experienced in this rebuild. For example, the Burdick family raised $40,000 by selling t-shirts that say Sanford Strong over the last year. And a restaurant from Detroit came up. They were not having much business because of COVID and brought all kinds of meals. We had a coalition of Deja Vu clubs that delivered cleaning supplies and water. We had individual business owners, construction companies. We had people help us write grant applications who had grant experience. We had the Sanford Gladwin Rebuild Project, which supported homes and businesses being rebuilt. The high school set up a donation center and staffed it. A council member's company allowed him paid time off to help with the recovery. Paint companies donated paint to revitalize 2 buildings downtown. You'll see in this picture the house on the left that looks brown and the house on the right that looks green. That is what the house looked like after these companies repainted it. And while they were here, they got so excited about helping that they landscaped the residence yard and they added gutters to the house. Hotels were offering discounted rates or free for people in town helping. Churches from all denominations were working together for flood recovery. The Dow Chemical Company has used their Pulling Your Weight campaign numerous times to continue to help clean up the village at no cost. The Sanford Legion had donations dropped off there, served food there. And American Legion from the Thumb was sending sump pumps, fans, and other materials to help the community clean up. Support for recovery comes also in the form of art. A professor from Delta College is painting a mural on the side of one of our buildings that you see in this picture, depicting the community spirit that we have here. And this came about by me running into a lady named Stacy Gannon at Pilates, and she said, "What can I do to help with Sanford?" And I said, what do you have to offer? And she said she's connected to the art world. So we got this mural being painted downtown. Numerous musicians have come and played for free at different events that we've had to help the community feel better going forward. We had 3 community members who collaborated on a song for the 1-year commemorative event and rolled out the song at that event. The Midland Area Community Foundation worked with a company in Freeland called Zentex to have this heart that was donated to Sanford on the left-hand side that shows the 2 flags. The heart is at the entrance of our village park, and there are smaller hearts there that are messages from people impacted by the flood. This heart has been recently featured in Hidden in the Mitten as a site to go see. The Midland Area Community Foundation, the United Way, and the Long-Term Recovery Group were instrumental in collecting funds to help clean up Sanford and to help rebuild residents. Without these foundations and funds, the recovery would have been much slower and painful. They brought their expertise and resources to the table, and we will be forever grateful. In addition, community members started a Facebook page called Sanford Strong, and it has now over 10,000 followers from multiple communities, and even people who left Sanford and moved other places in the country still follow their hometown and send help from following this Facebook page. They connected volunteers with materials. They opened a 501c3 so we could give some donations directly to individuals. In addition, we have an initiative that was called Sanford Shines, and that was a Christmas display of lights that was put downtown in one of the neighborhoods where all the homes were lost. It started as an idea in a couple different tracks. Bill Schutte wanted to see a tree lighting go on Main Street to celebrate the forward movement we've had. And at the same time, we wanted to see trees in the neighborhood that was now dark because the homes were gone. So we ended up with 64 Christmas trees from around the area, sponsored by different businesses. The city of Frankenmuth heard about this and sent donations. You'll see those donations in the truck in the bottom right-hand corner. And a flower shop in Auburn gave trees for people to decorate. We also have Sanford Grows, which is our new community garden. And we have Sanford Builds, which is our initiative with donors to build back homes in the community. For example, we work right along with Habitat for Humanity so that we have more residences coming back. And we have our Sanford Rising campaign, which is to show that the future of the village is on the rise. We have support from media such as CMU and Delta College, who have dedicated resources to documenting the event. The Midland Daily News and local television stations have people who keep coming here to report on what our needs are and that the community is coming back. These media outlets have celebrated our sorrows and successes with us as we rebuild, and we're grateful for their reporting. Our U.S. Congressman and state rep have been instrumental in getting resources for the area. The governor and the Dow CEO have made joint visits, and all of this was done during the pandemic. And you'll see the governor and lieutenant governor and the Dow CEO next to the Sanford Strong Heart in this picture. And we appreciate everyone coming. Some individual community members took a lot of their time to make contributions and rebirth to the town. So Angela Cole, who you see on the left-hand side, has helped provide legal services, help families rebuild their homes, got supplies for school children, and worked with Christy McDonald to bring long-term food distribution to the area, which they're still doing through the Regrow program. Megan Clark helped with numerous things She helped set up the donations at the high school. She helped with Sanford Shine. She helped get the donations from Frankenmuth, but most important, she worked with Dow to bring the Pulling Your Weight initiative, and she has hundreds and hundreds of hours of getting equipment and debris taken out of Sanford. We have our fire chief, Jerry Cole, who is now our city manager. He helped evacuate people. He was at the Edenville Dam when it broke. He provided first aid stations, especially when the bees escaped. We quickly got down there with first aid in case somebody got stung. Hosted the National Guard, who came and is helping us with projects like rebuilding the village park. Teresa Quintana, Emily Rickards, and Martina Rickards helped start up Sanford Strong, and we want to give them a lot of praise for what they've done to help the community come back. And Anna Marilat, who owns a number of businesses, including Three Diamonds Bridal Shop. Her family owns Briggs Landscape, has helped with equipment, and they're currently working on a Christmas calendar of the men who helped recover Sanford. That's going to be for sale as a fundraiser here soon. And she led the one-year commemorative event and numerous other events. So these are an example of the type of community members that we have helping us rebuild. And without them, this effort wouldn't have been as successful as it has been. I want to give another example of ongoing business support that we get from a gentleman named Dan Helen. Dan owns a company called Michiana Curb Appeal in the southwest part of Michigan. He saw this on TV and said God put it on his heart to help. He loaded up his company's equipment, and with help from family and friends, they were coming for a few days and stayed for 4 weeks. They've donated no less than $200,000 of labor and equipment. And in the process, he uncovered artifacts of the community, like you'll see the flag in the middle of this picture in the village park. He unearthed that and did a flag raising. He also unearthed our time capsule, which you see in the right-hand side, and then one of the poles that was used for the Ryan Burgess Memorial rebuild. So he's been instrumental in helping us, even though he didn't know any of us and he wasn't from here. He just said he couldn't leave. He had to keep helping. So it wasn't his town, but it was in his heart to be part of our recovery and now part of our community. He mentioned that there was a lot of blind trust in each other because he came here and just started helping, and we all had to work on this together. During that time, the hotels were not doing all of the services because of COVID, and since he was only going to be here for a few days and he stayed for 4 weeks, he asked a personal favor of me if I could wash his clothes at night and if he could pick them up here in the morning. So every night at midnight, he would drop a dirty load of clothes and his empty water cooler, and I would fill it up and have his clothes cleaned back on the porch in the morning so he could work again the next day. So he has stood side by side with us as we shed many tears and had many broken hearts in our community, but he's still coming to help. So through the efforts with Dan, when he was getting ready to leave, he said, you need an excavator with a thumb to make more progress to clean up south of the rail trail where so much of the debris and homes had landed. So I didn't even know what an excavator with a thumb was, so I had to look it up online. And once I figured it out, I called Annette Glenn and said I need an excavator with a thumb. She got a hold of Chris Moultrup from Three Rivers, and they met me south of downtown area on Cedar Street. We were surrounded by debris that slid from across town, boats, decks, buildings, homes, on tops of homes. And Chris Moultrup assured me I needed much more than an excavator with a thumb. Three Rivers mobilized equipment and began a massive cleanup effort. They coordinated numerous local contractors to provide equipment, labor, and overall support for the flood-struck community. Weeks into the cleanup, Chris decided to call J.W. Fisher and enlisted Fisher Contracting. After talking with J.W., another wave took place to clean up the war-torn neighborhood. And at this time, it's a beautiful park called Porty Park. So heartfelt thanks to Three Rivers and Fisher for everything they've done for individuals, business, and the community as a whole. Many times we were in the street standing with people as they shed tears while their homes were being demolished. Another example of courage displayed is by the individual business owners who had to invest in a significant amount of money to reopen and help this town thrive. We appreciate CJ's Salon, J&D Plumbing, the Sanford Hardware, the Red Oak, and Ellis's Party Store. These are family-owned businesses, multi-generational businesses who had to take a leap of faith to invest a lot of money to keep this town going. These were businesses not covered by insurance, and they're part of the future of Sanford. The fellowship and friendship that we have experienced has been incredible. We're Democrats, we're Republicans, we're people with vaccinations and people without vaccinations, but we're one unit, undivided. So what's on the docket for the future? We have an initiative sponsored by the Midland Business Alliance based on donations to begin working on our strategic plan. A firm from Chicago will be helping lead this effort. In addition, we're working with the low bidder on the Village Park project, which includes playground equipment, ball diamonds, a dog park, horseshoes, basketball, and many other things. We are short on funding at the moment, and like Bridget, we're working with FEMA and many others to finalize the dollars committed and the possible fundraising ahead. In the past, the Midland Area Community Foundation has helped us find dollars for things like our playground equipment and other rebuild projects. We are honored to be part of the Midland County community and appreciate all that's been done for Sanford. This is not a town, it's an experience. And I want to thank everybody on this call for all they've done to help Sanford come back.
Great, thank you, Dolores and Bridget. And as I spoke at the very beginning, when I talked about this being a challenging but an inspirational journey, I think you've picked it up from some of what they shared, the incredible inspirational stories and the people that have helped, and just the way people have joined together. And as Dolores said, it didn't matter where you were from, any of if you were here to form community, to work together and help our county recover from this. And specifically, I know Dolores referring to Sanford. So I wanted to talk about the long-term recovery group process. Holly and I will be covering this together, and wanted to talk about disaster recovery stages. And when you start to think about it's, as you heard the stories from Bridget and Dolores, you see what an amazing, almost overwhelming job it is trying to recover. So this will take you through how we're working with helping individuals recover in our community. And you see that phase one here is emergency. And that's really, I know Bridget handled how they communicated some of the things that were initially done to make sure that basic needs were met, shelter, food, water, etc. And then from there, from that emergency, we started to move to relief phase, where again, beginning to collect data, making sure that we understood so we could honestly get that FEMA declaration and have access to those FEMA resources. So the work that went on with damage assessments, figure out what was needed, and again, at that same time, providing relief that individuals needed to help them day to day as we were working through this process. And then we finally moved to long-term recovery, because that is beyond the emergency needs and just the relief needs to help people continue. We had to go into how do we begin to recover? How do we start to help people rebuild homes, their lives, etc.? And that's when we moved into this long-term recovery. And to really help with that process, on the next slide here, we highlight, if you could advance that next slide, thank you. We highlight some of what's involved in the long-term recovery group. So this is people coming together to work on helping individuals in our community recover. And it's a group of individuals from across different organizations within our community to work on specific needs. And we formed 6 subcommittees from the long-term recovery group. Initially, the long-term recovery group met frequently. I mean, in the very, very early stages, it was a couple times a week. It was weekly. And then, as things became, were put in place, then we were able to not need to meet quite as frequently as these committees were doing their work. Within that long-term recovery group, here are the 6 committees that were formed. And one of those committees had kind of 2 subcommittees as part of it. We have financial support. That group continues to meet on a weekly basis, looking at requests that come through our disaster case managers as they work with individuals impacted. They review those, and then they provide resources to assist those families in recovery. Volunteer coordination, and I saw that Bree is on the call today. So she helps to coordinate along with this committee the work of volunteers. And as you heard, volunteers have been critical in so many areas and continue to be. So I encourage you to look at volunteer opportunities and consider signing up as we're continuing to help with this work. Then housing support. And under this, it broke into 2 areas, the short-term needs, the long-term needs. And there were 2 committees looking at each of those as we worked on solutions for the future. There's the Rebuild and Construction Committee as they look at what's needed, and working with the disaster case managers, also deploying in-kind construction donations that were received, helping with skilled volunteers. So that committee worked with that portion of the process. And then public relations outreach. And I know Bridget talked about the initial communication that was done. And then as we move into long-term recovery, how do we let the community know how the dollars that they've given and invested are being utilized, how people are being helped, just to tell stories of hope of individuals that are continuing to recover. So the Public Relations Outreach Committee worked on that. And then case management and assessment. And this is such a key component. And again, I see that some of our case managers are on this call today as well. They work directly with individuals. They help them through the process. And at the end of the program, we're going to share that case management number with you and encourage you, if there are individuals or if you're working to recover, to please reach out to them. But this case management assessment committee was just such a key component, such a great connection to individuals impacted. So the long-term recovery group is made up of all those committees functioning and representatives from those committees serving on the long-term recovery group. And then on the next slide here, as we move on. I'm sorry, I'm working off a single screen, so I'm having a hard time viewing. This again, I think, puts in place some of the pieces around the long-term recovery group or the long-term recovery process. So again, as we talked about, meeting basic needs was first. We have case management, construction management, volunteer management, and deployment of resources. And please know that's continuing. This is continuing to happen on a daily basis. Case management, construction management, volunteers, and deployment of resources. That continues to go on as we work through this recovery process. And I'm going to hand it over now to Holly to talk about the recovery investments that have been made and the incredible donations that the community has come forward with to help in this process. So let me turn it over to Holly.
Good morning, everyone. Thank you so much for your interests and also for your advocacy as our community continues to work together to recover from the flood. And it's far from over, right? Where this work continues. I think as our DCMs can tell you, they are still working day and night with the folks who are working to recover from the flood. I thought it would be really nice to shine a light on some of the response we saw, not just within our own community, but across the state and honestly across the nation. If you think about the recovery efforts, it has had to be a hugely collaborative endeavor. And I also want to share how it's been a very leveraged endeavor. If you think about the initial damage assessment that the county did, it was over 150 million with an M dollars in just residential primary residence damage throughout Midland County. None of us had $150 million, right? So in order to fully recover our community, we really had to look at how do we leverage those resources, both volunteer, material and in-kind, state and federal, as well as in those generous local donations that poured in. So I thought this could kind of shine a light on the first with the in-kind donations. I would say within 48 hours, the phone started ringing with people saying, we are on our way with a semi full of, and then fill in the blank. The outpouring from across the state and honestly across the country was just humbling. We quickly partnered with Dow Chemical because we realized we didn't have a way to store all of these items, and they turned their hangar at the airport into a way station for all of those wonderful in-kind donations. We worked hand in hand to coordinate those out into 8 distribution centers, recognizing that especially when there was so much disruption and honestly so many roads that were inaccessible, place mattered, and we needed to get items to people where people were. To date, that's $1.7 million worth of food, tools, personal care items, hygiene kits, things like that were deployed early on. The second wave of that, as we migrated into long-term disaster recovery, was really the building materials. And this included drywall, siding, insulation, paint, sealants. We had batteries, but I will say even things like dehumidifiers, fans, shovels, boots, work containers to haul debris away. It was just amazing to see how many things poured into our community and how we really creatively and collectively got them back out into the hands of the people who needed them. The Whirlpool appliance sale, we hosted 2 of those, and the in-kind value of that is nearly $700,000. So those were steeply discounted to replace appliances that were lost. But I think what we heard a lot was, more importantly, is those were hard to come by. Think about the COVID environment. And often the things that were needed were on back order. And so not only could they save dollars, but they also could get them in their hands quickly. Bridget talked a lot about FEMA. From a residential and individual assistance perspective, you can see that nearly $49 million has been invested in our community through FEMA investments that are to help folks who are directly affected with their primary residence, as well as low-cost SBA loans that empower and equip people to start their recovery as well. Next slide. So this is a snapshot of where we are. And I will say that I think all of us in the long-term disaster recovery group can attest that we've had to be nimble and creative and really be focused on what the needs of the people were when it was happening. And that changed over time. I want to kind of shine a light on the fact that locally, between the Midland Area Community Foundation and United Way, we raised over $5.2 million for this effort. And that's truly a testament to this community and honestly to the way that we have far-reaching influence on people outside of our community that wanted to invest and help support this. To date, 4.1 million of that has already been reinvested. And I'll kind of point to the chart at the bottom because you might be curious to know, where is that going? So to date, we have already, these are basic, these dollars were for unmet needs, right? So that's as you've deployed FEMA, individual insurance, the dollars that people might be able to allocate themselves. We're left with what is unmet. And so to date, we've approved funding for over 135 homes, 47 of those in Midland City and 73 in Sanford, as well as 15 that kind of fall outside of that scope within Gladwin, Hope, around those border areas. So that's significant. But the other thing is to look at some of the other investments that were made. For many homeowners, water was an issue. You can imagine our aquifers were changed significantly when the lakes went away. And I know in our neighbors in Gladwin County, that was a really big eye-opening need that was pervasive in the early months after the flood. In Midland County, we saw that as well. I think we were very fortunate in Midland County that there was the ability to hook up to city water for a majority of the folks who lost their aquifers. And so you can see we've helped 160 individuals restore water back to their home, either by hooking up to city water or drilling a new well. And for some folks, that was the one thing that was holding them back from being able to live in their homes. The House in a Box kits was a really interesting collaboration as well. You think about the items that make a house a home. It's those household items. It's sheets, pillowcases, it's kitchen items, it's measuring cups and a sofa. and it's beds and bedding and all of those things that you think make your house a home. So this was a wonderful partnership that actually saved our community over $250,000, but also gave people new, not used, but brand new things that really could have fully equipped their homes as they were moving back in. In addition, and I think we touched about Sharon talked about this, is housing was so vitally important. For many people who lost their homes or could not live in their homes, housing is a real struggle. Think about, you have a mortgage on a home you can't live in. Can you really afford rent on top of that? And so I think we looked very creatively with that and partnered with our local HARA, which is Home to Stay, to say, okay, we're going to help you with it up to 6 months worth of rent assistance, as well as a security deposit, to make sure that people were safely housed, especially as we were heading into the first winter after the flood. We didn't want anyone to be unsafe. And those partnerships remain. Our DCMs work very closely with local hotels to make sure that people are safely housed and make sure that they, as they're going through their recovery, they have a safe place to be. And then I'll just mention even laundry vouchers. Dolores mentioned laundry. I think this was a big, in the initial 6 weeks of the flood, a lot of people had a lot of dirty clothes, things that had been gone through the flood and didn't know what to do. And so we partnered regionally with laundromats and offered simple vouchers where people could go in and for free do their laundry and some sense of normalcy. That was kind of an add-on to, we distributed them through the distribution centers where people were going to get food and water and recovery items. So, we still hear from people how much that meant to them to be able to just do something as normal as get their clothes cleaned. Next slide. And, Bree is on the line. Volunteerism is just, volunteers are such unsung heroes in this recovery. This is just the heart of our community in action. And this is what we've documented, but I will say, and I think Dolores mentioned this, the outpouring of people coming into our community was amazing. We coordinated over 20 VOAD groups, that's voluntary organizations active during disaster. These are groups from across the nation who are equipped to come in and help with our recovery, and they just showed up and we helped support them. But they were doing muck out, they were going door to door to help. But if you can imagine, so just since the flood dams broke, over 6,000 volunteers investing over 32,000 hours. That's nearly $1 million worth of donation time. And those efforts continue to go on. And again, that number is probably 3 times that if you think about all of the organic folks who just raised their hand, stepped up and said, how can I help? And we've seen that volunteerism continues to be just such a huge need and a big priority. But I also will say that one of the things that I think all of us are very proud of is we have not had a single case of COVID spread through volunteer efforts. And I think that's really a testament to some safety standards and intentional work to make sure that we are working in groups small enough to be safe, big enough to be effective, and some safety protocols in place to make sure that we are keeping homeowners, volunteers, and our community safe.
Great, thank you, Holly. And I wanted to talk about our disaster case management team, because some of the first dollars invested in this process were to hire the initial disaster case managers. And our case management team has actually expanded with a FEMA grant for case management that came to our region. So this is a list of our disaster case managers that are working with our long-term recovery group. And we do have the case management number on the screen. And I very much encourage, if you or someone you know is impacted that needs assistance, please reach out to our case managers. That's what they are there to do. And they look forward to working with you and to helping you through this process. So just a bit of, on the next slide here, what is next? And one thing I did want to mention is other resources. 211 is, that is the first place that we encourage you to call, so that they have a comprehensive listing of all the resources that are available in our community for those in need. So I want to encourage anyone that is on this call or those that you may work with, encourage folks to reach out to 211 for needs that might not be flood related, but other needs they may have. Again, we have the disaster case manager number here, and encourage those that are seeking assistance with flood recovery to please reach out to our wonderful team of disaster case managers. Long-term flood recovery is ongoing. So our long-term recovery group continues to meet. Some of those committees that are particularly activated continue to meet. So please know that that is going to continue to be underway as we work through the rest of this recovery process. I did want to talk about some parallel work that's going on in our community. The Four Lakes Task Force is working to address issues around the dams, those lakes, and recovery and repair. So they are continuing to work. They do have a website that has comprehensive information on what they are doing and what they have underway at the moment. So encourage you to check that out if you have questions on that. That's really a bit outside the scope of what we're covering today, but that is an important organization to know about in terms of their work. Also, the Midland Business Alliance has established an advisory committee on infrastructure, because we know that flooding, as we saw, we had 2017 and then we had 2020. We live in an area of rivers and water, and they call us, the Saginaw Valley for a region, this area, because watersheds do drain into this area. So as we look at long-term, how do we prevent, how do we mitigate some of the flood risk to help going forward? The Midland Business Alliance established an advisory committee on infrastructure. So they are meeting and they are working with the Army Corps of Engineers, as is the county, to look at some of this work going on that will assist with mitigation for the future. Because we know that, again, the watershed comes to our area. So what can we do to assist with that? So that is another piece that is underway and work that is ongoing. So with that, I'm going to open it up. If you would like to post any questions that you may have in the on the chat function here, and we'd be happy to handle those questions. And I do see a comment from Dave Pasick, but additional work going on. City and City Council is upgrading the city sewer system with $50 million of improvements to help there. So that work is going on as well. So any questions, or any of our speakers? I don't know if there's anything else that you would like to comment on. Dolores.
Sharon, I just wanted to mention that the dam stabilization project in Sanford is going to be ramping up here soon. And so Four Lakes Task Force just put out a communication, I think yesterday, that a lot of big trucks and equipment will be going in and out of the county park to begin the work on the stabilization of the Sanford Dam and the spillway and erosion control and whatnot. So yes, I appreciate you bringing that up, because there's still a lot of work going on in that space as well. So thanks.
There we go, unmute. So thank you, Dolores. I think that's great. And I know they've been trying to do a fair amount of communication out to the whole region, so folks are aware of what's underway. I appreciate you bringing that up. Other questions that individuals may have around the long-term recovery and things that have happened in the past? Okay. Well, seeing none, I want to say thank you all for your work that has taken place, and your interest, your investment. And I know many of you have invested your time, your resources to help with this recovery. And as you've seen, it takes all of us, and it has taken this entire community working together, and will continue to take that as we work through the remainder of the process. And I see a couple more comments here that, thank you. Gib just said, in reflection, we have been able to work together, and we were blessed that no one died. And that is a comment that I've heard from other communities, that a disaster of this nature, to have no deaths, is just really quite remarkable. Bridget, I don't know if you have anything you'd like to add on that. No, okay.
Well,
No,
Sharon,
it's just true. I mean, it's true. All 11,000 people, when you consider that the water was moving at 35 miles an hour and was tipping trees over like they were matchsticks and moving homes off their foundations, the fact that no one was hurt is just an incredible miracle.
Mhm. Absolutely.
yeah, one thing I want to mention, Sharon, is some community members from Sanford went down to Waverly, Tennessee after their flood, and then I went and talked with their emergency manager, and we really articulated with them the work that was done in this group, the long-term recovery group, for the next steps that they need to do in Waverly, and connected them with a number of you. So I think not only does this help our community, but we can use what we learned to help other communities. It sounds like you guys were also helping Detroit kind of work through their process. So the interesting thing, I think this was last night, was called the ripple effect, the event you had, but it is truly the ripple effect, because we're able to then talk to other communities and help share what we learned. And they appreciated it quite a bit.
Great, thank you.
Yeah.
All right, so again, sincere thanks to all of you for your great interest. Thank you to Bridget for her leadership of the county, just for her very courageous leadership during this challenging time. Dolores, for your leadership of the village of Sanford and all that you've done. And then to Holly, certainly for the incredible work of United Way of Midland County and their leadership in so much of this space as we work with recovery. So thank you for being part of today's program. Again, our plan is that this was our wrap up. Now, I will mention that these are posted on reliefmidland.org as well as on the Community Foundation's website. So you're welcome to look at any of the past subject areas that we've had and learn about them. And if there is a need or you have an interest in hearing an update in the future, please provide that input to any of us, and we are happy to schedule another one of these. So again, thank you for being a part of this today. Bye-bye.